So we still want to do introductions?
Yeah, if we wouldn't mind, just
Start with Susan.
Susan Miller, Pottawattamie County.
Jody Marsh, project manager, Pottawattamie.
Adam Ray, Pottawattamie.
Chris Frederickson, Shelby County.
Charlie Parker's Shelby County.
Jervis Johnson, Cedar Harlem.
Jamie Clark, City of Glenwood.
Richard Crouch, Mills County.
Scott Sewer, Iowa DOT.
Rachel Getch, Mappa.
Lindsay Button, Mappa.
Is there anybody on the phone?
And online, so I'm not sure if I was able to get the room speakers working, but Angie, if you could introduce yourself. You can
Angie,
hear, well, they
yeah.
can hear us. I don't know if we can hear them.
Right.
Is what I'm
Angie
saying.
Winquist.
So,
Hello.
Angie, can you give us a quick intro just to let us know if speakers are working, and if not, we'll rely on the chat for today.
Okay, this is Angie Winquist, City of Glenwood Mayor.
Sounds like speakers are not working. So online, we have Travis Holland with Iowa DOT, Carlos Morales with MAPPA, Turi Kohlgeiser with Missouri Valley, and Angie Winquist with Glenwood.
Okay. Go back to the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So move.
Second,
Move second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Everybody read the minutes? I have a motion to approve minutes.
so moved.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, John.
You just missed introductions.
John Rasmussen, Harrison County Engineer,
Ooh.
3 days strong.
I made you coffee.
Did you?
Well, Adam did. Jody did.
Yeah.
Well, congrats.
Welcome, John.
Haircut.
Okay, first on the agenda is 2050 draft long range transportation plan.
I wasn't able to get the link to work in the agenda.
Gotcha. We did go in and make some edits this morning.
When I was trying to get in.
Okay, that's probably why. So if you still can't get into it, this afternoon, go ahead and just send me a quick email and I'll troubleshooting, because I know we were messing with things in here. Okay.
Sound's not working.
They can hear us, but we can't hear them. So Travis says, congrats, John. Oh, and John knows how to fix the system.
It's very convenient.
Perfect. Thanks to the Harrison County engineers. for
Payroll
helping.
my own at this point. Mute all of them.
So they can hear us though, we just can't hear them.
Well, and you're not very loud, so I don't think the speakers are very.
Yeah, you have to speak up a little bit, because
Yeah.
I'm kind of hard hearing anyway.
My wife.
Did that do anything? That's
What?
better. Maybe?
Travis, speak for us so we can see if we can hear you.
Can you guys hear us?
Yes, there we go.
Okay, so that was a trick.
Bill's in there. Trick staying with him.
Hey, John, I'm allowed to leave, but you're never allowed to leave. That's the rule, okay?
There we go. Now we're all caught up. All right, so as you might be aware, it is that time in our 5-year cycle again, where we're going through our long range transportation plan update. And this one goes through the year 2050. So just a quick background. This is a state requirement for all regional planning affiliations, of which we are obviously one. Again, that's updated every 5 years and has that 20 planning horizon. Obviously, we're going a little bit further out with ours just to make that a nice even round at the 2050. That also is to match what we're doing on the MPO side. That one will also go out to 2050. The purpose of the LRTP is really just to kind of get an idea of what the existing condition of the network is, of the transportation network, as well as kind of identifying what the future needs might be in that 20-year planning horizon. It also goes through different types of data to kind of evaluate how those would impact growth, future needs of the region, and as well as any maintenance or just where that would happen on the network throughout that time as well. So this is due to Iowa DOT November 17th. So we're just doing the draft, going through the draft, hoping to get the approval for that today. And then we'll bring this back to you guys in a few months for the final. Again, this is just a little bit more information about what goes into the long range transportation plan. It helps direct planning efforts, programming investments. This is less, we don't work as much on a long range part as we would on the MPO side, just because of different state versus federal requirements for the long range plans. This one also doesn't have a model like we would on the MPO side. So those are just some differences if you're used to seeing some of that with the MPO LRTP. It is a little bit different and not a complete counterpart. A big part of this one, though, is prioritizing stakeholder involvement and public input. As part of that, oops, we'll get to that later. But let's go over the goals quick. So the ones on the right or the left you'll see are the goals from the last rendition of the long range transportation plan. That one went through 2045. You can see there's a lot of crossover. We did make some updates though. Safety became safety and security. As you might be aware, there's a lot of safe streets for all work and other safety plans being developed. We just got back the final county safety action plans for the 4 counties within RPA-18 as part of a broader 97 county project that was funded through the Safe Streets for All federal discretionary grant program. And we're also undertaking one currently specifically for 7 of the communities in coordination with RPA-13. So those are 3 communities from RPA-18 and 4 from RPA-13. For us, that's Harlan, Glenwood, and Missouri Valley. And because of that, that was one of the reasons we wanted to make sure we were including Missouri Valley within the membership, because this plan is going to have a big impact on what they're able to do with transportation, and specifically in regards to safety funding in the next few years. As because of those plans make them eligible for those safety funding.
You know, when the first round of those applicants will be approved for that funding?
You know, for the round that just closed?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure,
Okay.
especially.
Those are announced kind of around the end of the year, like.
Yeah.
So.
It's been a little bit hit or miss with some of the discretionary programs. Safe Streets has been pretty stable, but it's kind of just hard to say for sure where things are gonna go. So that one is safety. We also have the transportation options. So this time around, we were looking a lot more at enhancing accessibility, mobility, connectivity between those modes. A lot of what we're seeing as something that the communities themselves are looking at is more interest in the trail system and enhancing kind of bike pedestrian facilities and especially sidewalks. We've seen a couple of projects throughout the region looking at safe routes to schools and trying to ensure that the kiddos have a safe way to walk to school, and so they're not walking across busy highways, and that's never a good thing. We've seen a couple of accidents related to some of those that kind of have inspired those projects, because we want to make sure that that doesn't happen again. We've also seen a couple, and some of you, especially the county engineers, have heard some of this. We went around and did some presentations to the county boards in advance of this, as that was part of our outreach as well, just to make sure we were getting in touch with what the counties wanted to do, and if they had any specific concerns, questions, suggestions for us to include within the LRTP. Also within transportation options, there's 2 of the county trails boards are starting back up again for Harrison and Mills. So I'm just trying to get involved with that and make sure we include those, as they can also help with some of this applying for projects, especially when it comes to like bike ped. And that would be really related to the Transportation Alternatives Funding, or TASA, also called TAP, if you guys are familiar with that. That pot is specifically for those kinds of alternative mobility, such as bike and pedestrian facilities, trails. And we've had a surplus of that for some time now, and that's the pot we're going to be opening up here in October. We will not be opening up STBG as it's been programmed out completely through the end of our current tip. So we want to make sure we put that money in the TA set aside pot to good use. And so just encourage y'all, if you have any funding options that you would like to take a look at for that, and any projects that you're interested in, and MAPA staff can help. We're available for technical grant application support. Our ComDev team does a really great job with that as well. So they're there especially to support these rural communities. Alrighty, so preservation and resilience is another one. You might be familiar that Iowa put together a resilience improvement plan, I believe in 2023. As a result of that, one of their largest issues that was identified throughout the entire state, like I think it was like within the top 3 concerns that they identified when it came to hazardous weather, was flooding along the I-29 corridor, the Missouri River area, that causes a significant amount of disruption to the transportation network, and it's also really expensive to fix. So that's one of the big things that the state is looking at trying to address from how can we avoid this? How can we plan for this? The water's not going anywhere, and these events seem to be happening with greater frequency. So it's just something we need to do better about planning for and designing for. There is a federal discretionary grant, or there was, we're not sure if it'll be coming back, but there was a federal discretionary grant program that made those projects eligible for, because they were in that statewide plan. So we'll keep an eye on that and let you guys know if that becomes available again for the future. Economic vitality. So that goes into transportation facilities and making sure that we have a good understanding of what our current system looks like, especially like freight and rail. That would feed into that as well. There's this is something that hasn't been looked at necessarily in regards to travel and tourism within the region a whole lot. So that's a little bit more of a focus we're taking this time around for this specific goal, is trying to take a look at, okay, how can we revitalize our small communities? There's a lot of really great downtown projects that have happened in the last couple decades. We want to make sure we're bringing folks around so that they can enjoy those facilities and those new venues and whatnot within the RPA. And then that last one, we kind of combine those last two, the environment and land use and growth. That's essentially just, are we planning for the future, but also are we planning for how the distribution network is interacting with our land use and housing and those other not strictly transportation related parts of what urban planning and rural and community planning looks like. They all kind of end up bundled with housing and land use and some of these other things. And so we want to do a better job about making sure we're coordinating and collaborating with, okay, are we making the best decisions with our transportation system, looking at it through the lens of land use, as well as just how we're planning for the future growth and sustainability of our communities. All right. Those are the updated goals. So each of these goals is its own chapter within the LRTP. We do have a printed out copy. It's over 150 pages long, so you'll have to forgive me that I didn't print one out for everyone. But if you want to take a look, it's also available online. That's linked within the agenda directly on the website. Otherwise, feel free to hang around afterward and take a look at the printed copy. Also, if you're not able to access that, Susan did mention earlier that the link wasn't maybe working this morning. We were in the process of making an update to the version of the document that was there. And so that might have just been an overlap, but please let me know if you're not able to access the document for any reason. All right. And then we'll just wrap this up with a quick look at what outreach we did for the LRTP. This looked like we put out a public survey in summer, I believe, of 24. And surprise, surprise, we got 19 responses back. That's actually probably a little bit more than what we usually get for these types of surveys. They're typically not super popular just because it's very long range focus and the public doesn't necessarily have a good grasp of what the purpose is. But we got 19, so we'll take a little bit closer look at what those were looking like. That we also conducted 11 meetings, and then through this, if we open the public comment for the draft of the plan today, we'll also open that back up for a public comment. We already have that published and it's all ready to go. And so if we get any public comments through that, we'll incorporate those within our new LRTP for the final. All right, so this is just a quick look at what we did for outreach. We kind of went all around the RPA. From last summer through this summer, we actually still have one Board of Supervisors meeting scheduled for Pottawattamie towards the end of this month, but then that wraps up our outreach that we've done. That was a mix of a couple different community events. We went to the bike rodeo, and then there was a regional trails workshop. But other than that, it was primarily focused on leaders within the communities because they know generally what's going on and they can speak to something as kind of far out and long term as the LRTP. And then, all right. So this is some of what we got back from. Sorry, let me just pull this up real quick. From the survey. These were a couple of the questions on there. That first top one, you'll have to excuse me, I did not include the titles for these in my slides. But this multicolored one up in the left corner, that one is levels of agreement with various statements regarding safety, bike lanes and sidewalks and access to public transportation. So this was essentially the degree at which they agreed with those statements. As you can see, most people feel like they have good access to transportation in the area. That was a majority. As you can see, when it comes to going to commuting via bike lanes and pedestrian, there's also rolling that we typically include within that metric, which would include like skateboards, or if you're using like a wheelchair or something like that. That would typically also be included within that metric. As you can see, it goes down significantly as far as the confidence level. Within the region, we've seen a lot of concern over the sidewalk network, particularly within the small communities in the cities. And so that's something we're taking a really close look at, and that's something that I'll emphasize within the LRTP for the final draft. Great. MAPA also has we're working on putting together a regional sidewalk inventory. It's very slow going currently. We're kind of working on training a model to see if we can get it to do it through to automate that process instead of having an intern trace them all. Having done that before, it does take a while. So we were trying to figure out a way that we can get this done faster, and especially out in our RPA communities where they're just scattered. They're not necessarily within the urban area. And so there's not as much of a focus on those. So we want to make sure we're giving those due diligence and giving them the attention so that we can ensure that these areas have sufficient bike lanes and sidewalks available for the community, since that is an identified need. Let's see, and that one on the upper right, that one is responses to if you use a mode of transportation other than a personal vehicle on a regular basis, which do you use? That's probably not a surprise to anyone. It's a very vehicle-driven community just because of the way rural communities are set up. That's pretty natural. But again, there was a desire expressed for some more of those bicycle and walking facilities. So we're trying to take that into account and looking at this more as, okay, they aren't using them because they're not available. Okay, and then that bottom left, that one is top concerns overall indicated. As you can see, safety won out pretty well. That's something we're seeing consistently, especially these specific goals in that order have been pretty consistent across a lot of our public outreach in the last few years. Safety is pretty much always on top, followed by what options are available. And then the others, land use, sustainability, preservation, resilience, and economic vitality typically follow in more or less the same order as well. So that's something to take into account. There's not a huge gap here, but it is notable. And so we want to make sure the projects that we're putting forward are weighted according to the needs and the desires of the community. And this actually aligns pretty well with what our project selection process looks like. But we did consider going through and trying to update that to align even better. There's some places that we're missing when it comes to aligning with this. And so we want to make sure we're selecting projects that the community is asking for. All right, and then that one on the bottom right is
It's top right.
yeah, no, you're right. I had these mixed up. That one was priorities. This one's concerns. Same general idea though. These are essentially looking at, okay, these are the biggest issues we see within our transportation community at the moment. No surprise, maintenance and the condition of roadway really comes out. Bicycle and pedestrian facilities, again, it's kind of up there. I know this is not a huge sample size, so that's something to take into account as well. This is not a huge sample size. We also want to make sure we're addressing these comments as well as what the community is making sure that they're putting into this survey. And throughout some of the outreach that we've been doing, even for the RPA SS4A, we're seeing a lot of these similar sentiments expressed as we've been doing that. That's just been within the last couple months. We've been getting out into the communities, but we'll chat a little bit more about that here at the end when I give the SS4A report. All right. So to wrap up the LRTP, we've got, we wrapped up the first draft this month, presenting it today. It'll be open for public comment through August or through September, excuse me. And then we'll present it the final in October, and then we'll get that headed off to Iowa DOT by November with all the comments and edits included. Any questions or thoughts? All right, perfect. Love that. Charlie, you want to go ahead?
Yep. We have a motion to approve.
I'd make a motion.
Motion by Chris. Do I have a second?
Second.
Got a second by Richard. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
A technical second on this one. We'll do the policy vote.
Okay,
Okay. I'll second Charlie.
okay. Got a second? All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, policy side,
I'll make a motion to approve.
motion to approve.
Second.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye.
Awesome. Well, thank you. As I said, that is a draft in progress, so we'll be updating that periodically as we make major updates in the version that's online. We'll be sending the current one off to Iowa DOT for the draft so we can get their comments back. But otherwise, we'll keep bugging away at that. Again, if you guys end up looking over that later and you have any comments, please feel free to reach out to me and I'll include those as I can. All right, so next thing I'm sure you're all excited for is the bylaws revisions. So we had quite the conversation last month. So we went in and I took a really deep dive into what I had in there and put together that red line version. Susan also helped go through that and made some edits yesterday, and I put those in as well. So those are all updated with Susan's edits, which I think there were some really good comments in there that I missed. So thank you, Susan.
Point of clarification, are these bylaws or articles?
They are articles. They function as bylaws. It's more of it's a nomenclature thing. They just were called articles of agreement previously, but they are our bylaws. So if that's something that we want to update, I don't see any reason why we couldn't change that though as well.
Just seems confusing.
I can, is that a general consensus that we want to update that to just call them the bylaws of RPA-18 policy?
I think it'd be easier to call them articles the way they're written. It'd be require less changes.
Yes, we can do, I mean, either way, they're still functionally the bylaws. It's just a name.
We might be able to ask Elise as well if there's any
Yeah.
legal connotations.
Yeah, I did. We have a grants coordinator. She is working on reviewing these. She wasn't able to get through them before today's meeting, but if I get any of specific legal questions or comments from her, I'll be sure to update you guys as well with that, if she has any concerns. But otherwise, I did think we could go through some of this really quick, just because I know it's like 12 pages or something, and there's kind of a lot going on there. So just to break this down so we know kind of what's going on. All right, so this was kind of a point of confusion, I think, even as I was going through the current or the old articles and trying to update them, because they were written from the perspective of only one body instead of having both policy and technical. It was just policy at that time, and so the way they discuss membership was a little bit different. In the update, this is kind of how I've broken it out. It looks like a lot. It's less confusing than I think it maybe looks initially. So essentially we've got policy board, technical committee, and then what are might be considered general members. So in that first, I think it's Article 2, it refers to membership. And previously it was talking about just members as they interacted in the committee. It was more talking about the individuals as well as how those individuals represented their member jurisdictions. And so there was a little bit of a gray area there. So just to make that really clear this time around, especially because we were incorporating technical, I cleaned up some of that language so that that member is basically just referring to the member jurisdiction and whatever other entities, like for instance, we have SWIPCO, they're the transit provider for the region. They don't necessarily have a physical boundary, physical jurisdiction in that sense of the term, other than where they provide services, which I guess could be considered a jurisdiction. But generally, I put them under other eligible entities, other non-voting cities that are incorporated are also eligible as members, which basically just means they don't have the ability to vote, but they are eligible for the RPA-18 services. So like if a community from one of these smaller towns was like, hey, we have this grant that we want to apply for, but we don't have anyone within our community who's able to put that through, and we don't know anything about the process, they can come to MAPA staff and be like, hey, we could use some help with this, and our team can help put that grant application through. So that's just to make our services a little bit more accessible to more than just the 3 cities and the 4 counties that are currently voting members. Further from that, we have technical committee and policy board, and within those, we each have voting and non-voting representatives. The breakdown there is the policy board. Those would be members like Susan and Richard and Charlie, who generally are from the County Board of Supervisors, and they've been elected by their County Board of Supervisors to come and represent, be their county representative at RPA-18 specifically. That would also include the newly added small community rep, which is from Pottawattamie County, and that's to just have more of an at-large representation from some of those all small communities. But we'll get into that a little bit later. For the non-voting rep, there's not any that I'm currently aware of that fall into this category. But that doesn't mean there couldn't be. This would generally cover advisory participants or anyone who would just need to come by, but in a more official capacity. So we wanted to make sure we included that. Technical voting and non-voting. So technical voting would include county engineers and any other technical staff that have been nominated to be the voting representative. Those are more of an official what's the word? That's an official designation by their communities. And then anyone else who just doesn't have voting capability, which for instance, SWPCO would fall under that, or other technical stakeholders would fall under that as well. Yes, yes. That would fall under that. Yeah, and that would include like FTA, FHWA, Iowa DOT members. They don't come around a lot, but when they do, we want to make sure that we have their function really clearly spelled out so that we know what's going on. All right. So breaking down into the articles now that we've taken a look at how those affect each type of member and representative. That first initial article is really just kind of setting the stage. I updated a lot of the RPA history and current functions. I think that's in 1.02. And then went in and we also updated some of that statutory reference as it has been updated since. For reference, I didn't mention this earlier, but the last update to this was in 1994. So these are quite out of date. And so there was just a lot of language that needed to be updated. We don't even, it was initially called the RTA. We're not the RTA anymore, we're RPA. And so there's just a lot of even the nomenclature that we were updating as we went throughout this. So a lot of it was just basic, like we're changing the name. So we needed to update that. But there was quite a bit of content change as well.
So real quick on the
Yes.
membership, when you have SWPCO there, shouldn't that be SWITA instead of SWPCO?
Technically, the official members though, we have John McCurdy is the executive director, and then Mark Lander typically is the member who actually comes to represent. They are officially they're officially the directors of SWPCO, so that's just how we denote it. If there was a reason to change that to specifically denote it as SWITA, we can. I'm not sure that it would matter necessarily just because that's the parent organization.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that that's accurate because I mean, technically it's a transit side of SWPCO that's.
Right, yeah.
I will say, Scott, that in the actual articles, that agency is not called out by name.
Yes, yeah.
An example, I think on the slide.
So you could use SWITA as an example as well. Just put them both in.
Yes, yeah. Yeah. Within Article 1, just as a quick note, we did include the addition of an expansion clause. I'm not exactly sure what that could look like, but MAPA leadership wanted to make sure we included the possibility of expansion for RPA-18 and what that might look like as the urban area is getting larger and kind of growing out. They're kind of growing out into the RPA space a little bit. You might recall we changed the urban area boundary just this last, what was that? Was it a year and a half now? We updated that our urban area boundary so that it included all of Underwood, but then I think it was not Crescent or the other way around. I forget now, but essentially it changed the boundaries, and so that affected some of the how we calculated population for the region, and that had some interesting consequences overall once everything was kind of said and done. So we want to make sure we're keeping an eye on that and leaving ourselves open for growth in the event that occurs. The Article 2 membership, that specific article membership, that's again, like I was saying earlier, that's the membership as jurisdictions and those other entities. And then we also included that participation, such as voting, is applicable per the Articles 4 and 5, which are the articles that specifically go over policy and board and technical committee, and as well as those voting and non-voting representatives. And then it kind of just cleared up, okay, now that we have these different types of jurisdictional members, how does that break out when we talk about whether they're in good standing? So we just clarified some of that language as well, because there's counties who pay the dues, cities don't. But essentially, if you're a county in good standing, then the cities within that county are also in good standing. And if you're a non-due entity, such as like SWPCO or SWITA, then you're just basically always in good standing is generally the idea. So just clarifying some of that language so there wasn't any confusion. All right, powers. So powers were generally put under the purview of the policy board. That was more to keep in line with how other communities and RPAs are running, kind of a best practice for how they're running their RPAs between policy board and technical committee. A lot of other RPAs typically have them a lot more split, and so it's less overlap. But because we're more overlap and more merged together, we wanted to make sure we had that clarified. But it's not a favoritism like, ooh, policy board's amazing. That's just typically how most RPAs are running their official powers. And a lot of that is actually ends up delegated to MAPPA for administrative, financial, legal, contractual, where our staff is doing a lot of that work anyways. So it kind of is just a legal safety. Article 4, we had a ton of change within this article. That was the for the policy board. So again, we went over the voting, non-voting. This also, we changed this so that it's one county supervisor per county, and then mayors of cities over 2,500. That used to be over 5,000. We updated that so that we could include Harlan and Missouri Valley. So those were edited to be able to better capture the needs and the communities that we're serving. And then we also added that small community representative from Pottawattamie County. So that's any city under 2,500 is eligible to be nominated by the policy board on a 2-year rotational term to function as a small community representative. So I think there's a list. I think it's like 8 to 10 cities. I don't have them off the top of my head, but that would qualify for that. So we can discuss that a little bit more. I know that one was something we had to talk through a lot. But if you have any questions about how that's breaking out when it comes to term lengths, I know Susan recommended 3 because she feels that it takes a few years to get kind of an idea of what the purpose and mission and goals of the RPA is. The reason I ended up putting 2 was to just match officer elections, because those are also on a 2-year cycle. And I felt like if we added 3 in there, it might get a bit more confusing. So I wanted to try and keep it as simple as we could. There's also a clause in there that if for some reason that specific individual representing the small community rep leaves or resigns or moves somewhere else, we could start a new term completely from scratch. Obviously 2 years isn't super long, and if you're halfway through a term and we have a new person come on, then they're only there for a year. That kind of negates the purpose of having them be able to get used to the group. So they would just start a new full term from that point. All right. Couple of the other notes to make. We previously had, there was the ability for technical and policy members to serve somewhat concurrently on if you were like a primary. for technical, right? You could also serve as an alternate for policy. It started to get really confusing, and it started to be like, okay, who are you voting for? Which body are you voting for today? And so we wanted to avoid those complications and just to kind of clarify who is doing what, and so we understood what roles people were acting in. So we got rid of the ability to serve concurrently, but if you were to like go from a technical committee capacity and then you're become an elected member, that's totally fine. It's just not at the same time. Yes, and then we did update the election cycles from 1 year to 2 years. So going forward, those will be elections on even years on the meeting before July 1st, and then they'll take, they'll take office essentially after July 1st in the start of the new fiscal year. Another thing, which this is just something we added that we've already been doing, is that votes will be conducted separately from the technical committee. So just like we have been doing and did just a few minutes ago, we typically have, and this is for matters that pertain to the purview of both technical and policy, we'll have a vote for technical, where we'll have just a regular, make a motion, we need a first and a second, and then we do the same thing for policy after there's been a recommendation or lack thereof made. So we just put that into the bylaws, so it's official. All right, the one we're excited about, Article 5. So this is a brand new one. It is really strongly as we could, we wanted to mirror what was going on in policy board. So you'll see a lot of that language overlaps. There isn't a small community rep for technical just because we didn't see a need for it at the current time. That might change. And in which case we can definitely update these. The way officers work is we typically have policy board being the presiding officer or running the meeting. If they're gone, it's typically the vice chair of the policy board. And then if they're gone, it would be the technical chair and then the technical vice chair. In the case that these two groups would meet separately, then they would just function within their own purview, and the technical chair would be the presiding officer. Articles 6, 7, and 8 were really super minimal. That was mostly just updating that nomenclature. And then Article 9, we added in a 5-year review cycle. We didn't want to let 30 years pass by again before we review these. And so we've just added that in to make sure that'll happen on a more consistent basis. So instead of doing one huge update, we can kind of take it as we need to. And that's what we got. If the body is ready to vote on this today, we can. I totally understand though, if you guys want to take a closer look at the changes that were made though, and we can table this until October's meeting.
In section 402, so you have it down as the policy board is made of the chairs, the board of supervisors. Is that just a board supervisor representative and not necessarily a chair?
So I was trying to do that.
4.02.
Talking about last month.
Yeah.
Yeah, hold on.
No, I'm so sorry. Got that. That doesn't
Okay.
make all one. Yep, we.
Fix that one already.
Yep. Yeah, that was one I edit. She incorporated. Good job.
Yeah, sorry, I printed out several versions of these and then we kept making improvements. So I apologize if anyone has an old copy.
I guess I'm struggling with the technical committee. It's super clunky how we do it. I don't know why we're just not non-voting members at this point, because it's just disruptive for the meeting really to take 2 votes. Plus, I don't even know if we have a quorum today in the technical committee, so I don't want that to hold the meeting back either.
We talked about that earlier, John, and
I'm on vacation for a couple months.
yeah, Lindsay or Rachel can chime in too, but if we don't have a quorum, the people that are here representing the technical committee can still make a recommendation to the policy board, even though there's not a vote cast.
But there's never an action coming out of the technical committee other than, I feel like, I hate to say I feel like a pacifier, but I just feel like it's not doing anything.
The main reason for that is so that we have documentation that something has been reviewed and approved by the technical committee, so that so for something that might have a more technical need attached to it, then we have like evidence that the technical committee has said this is good to go before the policy board then has to vote on it. So that's kind of the way that it's structured on the MPO side as well. And I believe, Travis, you can chime in if it's different, but I think that's how the other RPAs, some of the other RPAs operate as well.
Yeah.
Is just trying to make sure that there is that technical review incorporated into how we do business. And then formal approval by the policy board, which is ultimately the body that has powers to formally approve things.
So to be fair, like you guys, the county engineers would be the professionals that understand the documents, the projects that are being submitted, all these things. That's why it's important to have your approval, or at least your recommendation to the policy board, because no disrespect to the board of supervisors, but they don't necessarily all understand
The day-to-day.
the day-to-day ins and outs, projects, how we got this project, that kind of thing.
I understand that, but I mean, that, to me, that should be part of the discussion. My concern is if you didn't have a quorum of the technical committee, then did you just torpedo the policy committee? If you're making two motions, I don't know who's online. I don't think we have a quorum in the technical committee today.
We have Chris, Jamie, and John.
Chris,
So that's 3. Then we only need 3 right now.
Okay.
After approval of the bylaws will be at 4. We do have a lot of people out of town today, so that's part of the reason. August, we usually don't have the August meeting, but we had a couple of important things we wanted to go over.
The proxy vote, that's kind of going away. Charlie was probably here by himself for a lot of years. Pottawattamie County probably didn't see anybody for a decade before Susan started coming. Richard's been in and out. He has time, I think, but
I've not seen somebody from Harrison for a long time.
we haven't seen anybody from Harrison for a
They
long
were
time.
here last month.
Yeah, so I've been
I wasn't here last month.
we've been in touch with them. Apparently Tony wasn't getting emails or something, and so I had reached out to Brian because I saw Brian was the chair of their board of supervisors, and we were kind of trying to figure out what the representative system was looking like at that point. So Brian came last month, and he had a bunch of really good questions, so we were able to chat with him. Wasn't able to get in touch with anyone this month for Tony or Brian, but I know it's kind of back on their radar. So I'll continue to reach out and make sure that they're aware of what's going on.
Yeah, it just didn't follow the exclusion of the technical committee from being a representative, because the board could pick any 2 other people on earth besides a technical person as their proxy. And I don't know if that really works very well, because you'll have, the engineer will be there regardless, just working on quorums. There was years when there was no quorum, and that's really how the proxy probably got used the most, I guess, is that's the only way really a meeting was gonna be held that day, because you didn't know who was gonna show up.
Yeah, and we have been doing better. Like, I'll typically reach out Monday or Tuesday, at least I try to, if I haven't gotten enough responses back on our calendar invite. And sometimes that's just a regular thing. Not everyone responds to calendar invites. I know those are coming through Google, and not all of you might have the ability to be like, yes, I'm coming. So that's part of that. But typically I always reach out via email to those that haven't responded to the calendar invite, just to get an idea, like, hey, are you, if you're going to be out of town, like, no problem, just let me know. And I think we've met quorum. I don't think we've ever not met quorum in the time I've been coming to RPA, except for maybe once. And it was like early last year type of thing. So we've been doing really good lately. I think it helps if, not the staff, if we're on top of knowing who's planning to be here and making sure that we're planning around that as well.
I think having different group of people reviewing documents, like somebody mentioned here, with the engineer looking at documenting policy for approval. I mean, that's more transparent. Also, too, we're doing our due diligence when we approve this. We have people from different areas looked at it, made that decision, even if they're not voting. I'll feel safer that way, just to have that more input from different people.
I guess, John, what was your suggestion?
I'm not sure you want to hear it. I'd rather be a non-voting member with a proxy vote than be on the technical kind of situation I'm in, because if the county is not represented at all, then I'm better off being a voting non-member or non-voting member with a proxy vote than I am technical. And that's probably gonna be the case for everybody on the technical committee. If your community is not gonna get represented at all, then yeah, don't know how that's the best case for the counties or the cities, I guess. I'm mostly concerned about that proxy, but I guess it seems strange to me that the board can give it to anybody other than the engineer. It's gonna be at the meeting for sure. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, John, and let me chime in here, just a little bit. One of the things is we're really diligently trying to work through, our triennial report that we got from Iowa DOT. And this was one of the areas where we had deficiency, right? We needed additional representation from smaller communities, which is being done here. But the other part is bringing in more perspectives when it comes to voting. I think the intent isn't to limit, right? Our intent and the reason we are doing some of these changes is really because we want to increase the level of discussion and provide a different opportunity for different points of view when it comes to spending federal dollars, right? We want to ensure that those conversations are rich, robust, and include so many different perspectives rather than being a wholesale one-sided perspective. You know what I mean? And I think that is our intent. We're really trying to encourage more participation so that we can make the best use of these federal dollars, and also accept all the different points of view in terms of how we go about allocating some of these funds. So that's really kind of behind the scenes of what we're trying to do.
And I'm in favor of all that. I'm just trying to keep the bar for the quorums to be as low as possible, because we definitely struggled with that for, geez, a decade. I could probably from 2004 to 15 or so, or even further. So just trying to bring some history into it. A lot of you weren't here when this meeting was just about impossible to have, and we have good attendance now, but that doesn't mean we will a year from now. So I'm just afraid if you make the bylaws such a high bar that you can't reach it, then, or even you have the attendance to fix the bylaws.
John, I'll
my
chime in here a
caution.
little. I'll chime in here a little bit. And while I always like to remind people that this isn't just an STBG selection committee, you don't get your STBG funds if the tip isn't approved. So naturally, that's the motivation for a county supervisor to attend a meeting, because what was that, between like 1.8 and $2.2 million a year is kind of dictated upon your tip being approved. And your tip being approved is dependent on your TPWP being approved. So I think it's just making sure that the elected officials in each jurisdiction understand the importance of that. And
Yeah, and if there's anything we can do as MAPPA staff to encourage some of that, I know I've been trying to reach out to make sure members are aware of what's going on and trying to keep folks updated with what we're doing. But if you have any suggestions for how we can maybe reach out or being more inclusive in that process, I'd be open to hear any suggestions. As a note, we did say for quorum that it would be the presence of 50% of total membership or no less than 3%, whichever is greater.
3 individuals, 50% or 3 people.
Yeah, sorry. That makes way more sense.
3%?
Yeah, 3 individuals.
1%.
For what the current, for what the upcoming membership would look like, that would be 4. But we've been meeting 4, and I understand you said that we haven't always, so there is definitely the history there. But I think what we could do is we could pass it as is and then say, hey, if this becomes a problem, this is just like a simple, we just need a policy board meeting to say, hey, we're gonna tweak that language a little bit. Like, this is not something that we're gonna change and then we won't see it again for 5 years. We can really go back in and tweak it anytime we want. So if we make a change and then we decide, hey, this isn't working, there's no reason we can't go back in and adjust.
It's been 30 years since we opened this up. So.
Yeah, that's why we added in a requirement to get back in there. So
You won't be here. I
I
won't
won't
be.
be here.
So we're definitely gonna make that part of that. We want to make sure we're continuing the, the 3 Cs of planning, coordinating, collaborative, no,
I never.
continuing, coordinating, I don't remember, comprehensive, that's the third one.
Comprehensive,
So those are the 3 Cs that we're trying to incorporate into all of our planning work. And so making sure that we're doing that is an important part of making sure we're making it a continuing process, not just something that it's a one and done.
Does the policy board have an issue with the engineers being proxies? Or I guess where's that? I'm still hung up on that. Sometimes that's the way meetings.
Let's open it up to the membership. Does anyone else have a strong opinion either way?
Well, I'm thinking now about the quota or the quorum requirements and adding another representative on the policy committee from Pottawattamie County, so that just boosts our ratios up. And I would rather have an engineer voting in my place as opposed to not having a vote.
I agree with
I
that.
like the proxy idea.
I agree.
And you can still have a proxy, they just can't be on the technical committee
At that
Right.
time.
which is,
Well, so I mean, and that's the point of clarification, I guess, is that they can't serve both roles simultaneously, or they can't serve both roles ever. So,
It is simultaneous.
right, so like it could be a situation where you have one meeting where the policy board member isn't able to attend, so the engineer takes the role of that policy vote for that meeting, but at that meeting cannot serve on the technical committee.
Right, it's either or.
But they could still maintain their role on the technical committee if that policy board member should have.
So the
Potentially.
way we have it now, it's like, say, I use John for an example. So say John is the Harrison County engineer, and he is the proxy vote for Harrison County. He should be able to vote on the technical committee as the engineer, and if he represents them in the proxy vote, he should be able to vote with the policy board.
I think that's when it gets legally messy.
Yeah.
Because you're not technically supposed to be able to vote for two entities at the same time. But in that situation, if the technical committee is not formally approving anything with their vote,
Right, does it matter? It's a feel-good vote out of the technical side from what I
Thank you,
did.
Chris, that's what it is. The technical committee votes doesn't. I mean, as it's reviewed, it doesn't do anything.
It's more of a formality.
There's no action to it. It's just a,
Yeah, I mean, it's not the ultimate action, but it is a formality, and it is you're giving your blessing to the policy board, which is what we want. That way it's not.
and that should just be part of the discussion on this stuff.
One of the other points on that is, it's also, it's more maybe soft influence than what what the policy committee has, which is maybe more of like a hard power type of thing. What I've observed just from having staffed these for a little bit now, is that the technical members have a lot of influence on whether or not the policy vote goes through. So even though the technical vote feels like it may matter what you guys say and what you guys think about whatever action it is, does matter too.
That's exactly what I'm doing now, right? Is that what you're saying?
So I'll give you a scenario. Several years ago, after the planner in District 5 went to the central office, I had to take over Region 17, and Region 17 at that time was an absolute mess. And there was a lady that was representing Appalachia County on the policy board. She did not like her county engineer, and she didn't understand the whole process of the way we do things and the why we do things. And so when it come time for voting on the tip, she would vote no, even though her projects were in there too. And just because she was a bitter type person, which could have prevented, Appalachia County from projects moving forward in the tip and in the long range plan and everything else. And so that's a problem. That's why I say I don't know if I have as much of a problem with the technical committee.
I think we want to be a little careful about that. because ultimately the reason that the powers lie with the RPA policy board is that those individuals are elected officials. So I think we want to be very careful about discussing stripping of powers from the boards of supervisors.
No, I don't want to do
I
that.
think, yeah,
I don't want to do that either. I'm just giving you an example
Yeah.
where we have
Oh, for
one person that was just totally against everything we were doing.
So with your clarification, thank you for that. If I showed up as a policy board instead of a technical committee, then I could run the quorum. That way is, maybe there shouldn't be a quorum requirement for the technical committee. I don't. That's my concern, is just quorums and actually taking care of the business when we do show up, because there's been times when we couldn't.
So when we vote, we actually should take the vote of the technical committee first before the policy. Votes. Because
I think you have to do
you
two votes.
recommended it to us.
That's why. Yeah,
That's kind of the way we do it now.
Yeah, why it's set up that way, right? Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Well, I know from my 3 years of experience on this board, what the technical committee recommends makes a lot of sense, and it makes it easier for me to respond as a policy committee, having that input from the technical side.
So we can still make a decision as a policy. It doesn't matter what the recommendation comes from technical. But your input help us to make that decision. So yeah, it can be a voting part of it, non-voting, but your input matters. So I don't know how you.
Well, I think that's the way to capture it is to take the technical committee vote and the
Mhm.
recommendation to the policy board. And that way the policy board can say, well, we got the recommendation from the technical committee. And it makes sense to us, and that's why we're voting in favor or just not in favor, whichever the case might be.
It makes sense.
And it's clear to the public that there was separation from the engineers and the city administrators to the board of supervisors and city officials.
I think it would be beneficial to table it until October. I mean, I know we keep tabling it. I think right now, the bylaws document that Rachel handed out is very comprehensive. It has a lot of the track changes in there, so everyone can kind of see what's been changed. We've had a lot of really good discussion about why those things have changed. I know we've gotten at least one comment from Iowa DOT already, so there are a couple things we might want to modify further a bit anyway. So I think if we table this until October with the knowledge and assumption being that when we come back in October, we are prepared to vote for something, I think that would be fair.
And if it's beneficial, some of those things that we discussed today, I can maybe send out like
Like a
a
summary.
mentee or something like that, so we can just get a better idea of what the consensus is. Just so I know what to bring to that meeting.
Easy making that decision, yeah.
So we'll include in that whether or not we want to have the proxy vote be simultaneous, and whether or not we want to have quorum for technical, and whether or not we want to have them, or whether or not we want them to be just non-voting members. Those are kind of the three things I heard. Was I missing anything?
And just to clarify, I don't think we'd be able to send out a survey not during a meeting, because
Oh,
we
yeah,
kind of have
that's
to
right.
make sure that all of the discussion that centers and all the decision points are made public, so. That might prevent
Okay,
us.
so yeah, that's a good point.
I think the easiest solution is if you could remove the quorum for the technical committee.
Yeah.
If somebody has one role or the other, then
I can also prepare multiple versions. It's not a huge language change for those. And then we can just show up, do the mentee at the beginning of that meeting or whatever, kind of get an idea.
Be possible.
Yeah, and then we'll kind of move forward from there, assuming there's no other changes that are being requested at that point.
And we would very much hope that everyone has a chance then to look through this document between now and October, so that if there are any other concerns, they're kind of raised before that meeting.
So I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If we remove the quorum technical, can we, if one person is here and give us an input, can we be able to take that?
I mean, yeah, because
You know what I'm
it's
saying? Because
not,
you're worrying about having enough people being here to make that decision. if we remove that and there's only two people, your input still matters. We can make that decision based on
Yeah.
that. So I don't know if,
Well, the transparency is still there. The agendas go out, the packet goes out. If somebody doesn't show up, it was in front of them, they should have read it. I don't feel bad for them.
And then the minutes would go out after the fact so that everybody knows that the technical recommendation was taken, but there was only one person there.
Yeah, because it
One
would be a
concern
vote.
that I potentially. But one concern that I potentially have about that is then we start getting technical members just not showing up because they feel like they don't have to be here. And then we start losing those voices and that input. And so that's, for me, that's what the protection of having a technical quorum and a technical vote was to make sure we were still getting those voices. So that would be my caution with that, but I'll move forward with preparing those different versions of the bylaws.
Hey, Rachel, I have a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Have you, is county highways the only mode that you guys have proposed to be on the committee? I mean, I assume that you have John McCurdy on the policy and then Mark Lander on the technical for SWITA?
Yeah, so I don't have them actually specifically included
But
in
their titles?
anything other, like they're not called out by name within our bylaws right now. Because that whole how we interact with SWIPCO has kind of fluctuated a little bit and it's been inconsistent, and honestly, we typically don't have a representative from SWIPCO coming. So the way they interact with the group hasn't really been clear for a really long time. So I
Yeah.
didn't want to like tie them down in stone without giving them a chance to be able to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it'd be really important for them to be included since you guys do joint planning documents together that the RPA policy board has to approve every 5 years. The
Yeah.
passenger transportation plan. And then I'd also want to make sure that you guys are looking at the potential of technical experts in the TAP realm with trails and bike ped and stuff like that. At the end of the day, your board effectively oversees three things. It's STBG money for roads, TAP money for trails, and then transit, just general coordination. So I think making sure that the technical committee has those at least three modes, that helps you gain more people so that actually getting a quorum isn't as difficult. So that's kind of my 2 cents of it. Statewide, it's very common for transit and trails to be very active in RPA boards. And I can find examples of those if you guys would want them. I don't have any right here. I've kind of been looking as you guys have been talking, but I would really recommend that because like I said, it is a transportation committee for the region, not just one particular road or one particular pot of money. So
For sure. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I know, like I mentioned earlier, 2 of those trails groups are getting kicked off. And I'm getting in touch with those chairs. So I'll be sure to include them in any future communications.
I think that those groups are covered as non-voting members already, and
Yes, like there is a space for them should they.
if we want to include them as voting members, Travis, I think that's kind of a bigger conversation that we might need for an amendment to the current update for the bylaws. 'Cause I don't think that's something we would be able to get implemented by October. I don't think
Yeah.
we've had enough discussion about that yet.
no, I get that. I just think that if a committee is going to be deciding on a funding source for transportation alternatives, naturally technical experience leading up to that would be important.
Yep.
No, yeah, thanks for the input. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and table this. Thank you all for such a great discussion. That was really good. Love it when we have next steps to work on. We can move forward with public comment. No public comment being had. Additional business. So we've got just a few, what time are we at? Okay, I know we're running late, so I'll run through this really, really quick. We presented on this last year, but as you might be aware, we try and make sure the board is aware of any grant funding opportunities. So the Rural and Tribal Assistance Program, Pilot Program, or RTAP, is opening back up again. The neat thing about this is that it is 100% federal, and it's specifically for rural communities. So this could be a really good source of funds for different transportation projects, specifically advancing those infrastructure. It closes October 8th. It's not open yet, so you've got a good amount of time. There's that informational meeting on this 26th, so if you can probably even just Google that, or I can send this link out later as well if that's helpful. It'll also be included in the minutes once we get those published. We have got about 54 million total funding available, so that'd be for everything, not just a single project maximum type of thing. The maximum would be 250 to 2.5. That's over your typical 3-month federal discretionary grant period. There are no more multi-community grants. That was something that they had available for the last cycle, where basically different communities that were smaller could bundle together projects that were like similar. If in case it wasn't, like, for instance, it didn't hit that 250,000 benchmark. And so that was a way for those really, really small communities to kind of work together to still get funds. So they got rid of that this time around. I think maybe they just weren't implemented to quite the amount that they wanted to make sure to keep it going. But there's supposed to be a lot of decent amount of projects awarded. So please, if you have any projects that you would be interested in applying for this, feel free to reach out to MAPPA staff and we will try and work with you and help you get that grant application in by the deadline. Next really quick thing, as you guys are aware, we've been working in the RPA-18 and 18 SSRA. We are in our data analysis and outreach phase currently. These numbers are actually out of date. We were able to reach out to some of the Red Oak socials, and so we were able to get a bunch more input from Red Oak specifically. We've had a lot of success with Harlan. That's a screenshot of Harlan's markers right there. I'm pretty zoomed in. So we're getting a lot of good community input from those two communities. The other communities, not so much. So if you guys have any contacts, specifically Missouri Valley, Glenwood, Jamie, Angie, if there's any way we could get those on city or community socials, we found that's been really effective in getting responses back. It's really user friendly, and it works on mobile or computer. And so we're just trying to make sure we're getting some good community input in each of the communities. And right now it's kind of really strongly leaning towards just a couple where we're getting a lot of responses. So that's great, but we want to make sure we're getting more from the others as well.
So we're up to 41 map contributions so far, but again, 27 of those are from Harlan. We've got 6 from Red Oak. So Turi, I know you're online from Missouri Valley. If there's any way you can help us kind of push this out to Missouri Valley, that would be helpful. Angie, same for you as well for Glenwood. I know that our partners at SWIPCO have been working to get this pushed out a little more strongly to the communities in RPA-13. But yeah, that's kind of the big thing. But thank you, Harlan. I don't know what you're doing, Jervis, but there's been a lot of responses from Harlan, so it's very exciting.
And then just a quick summary of what we've been doing. We've been out in the different events. I'm doing some pop-up booths, doing physical activity where they can kind of do their little dot budget exercise. We haven't gotten those numbers digitized yet. So we're working on that, and then we'll present at that once we finalize these events. Our last one is Shenfest, Shenandoah, and that'll be at the end of September. And we've already been able to talk to almost 300 people just with the 4 events we have gone to. So that's been really successful. So really excited about the input that we're going to get from that we'll be able to include within our overall safety plans. But, and then one last thing, for events coming up, we've got the annual Council of Officials meeting. So this is Wednesday, October 8th, which is actually the same day as our next meeting, except for that'll be in the morning and this is in the evening. This will be out in Fort Calhoun, and we've got Ken, I'm going to butcher his last name, Moriano, speaking from the Scott Data Center. So there's a QR code there that you can scan to get registered. That way they just know how much food they need and whatnot. And so yeah, if any of you are interested in attending that, please go ahead and get registered so they know how much to prepare and what. Other than that, and this is just some more information about the speaker. But again, we can send this out so you guys don't have to hang around. But yeah, if for some reason we end up needing to have a September meeting, I'll let you guys know. I don't foresee needing one at the current moment though, so I would move forward under that assumption. Otherwise, I will see you all in October.
Okay. Anything further? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Second. Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned.